Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of CaneSport's Inside the Lines. Today, we are going to go inside the lines with a special guest, the guy who I have the utmost of respect for. He's the best at what he does in the industry, and that's On3's National Recruiting Director, Chad Simmons. And Chad, this is our first week at On3, and I'll point blank tell you that one of the biggest reasons that we chose to carve our future with this new network was the fact that you were already there. And you are the best I have ever seen in my 40 years in this business at doing what you do and heading up national recruiting. And Miami, with Mario Cristobal coming in, is becoming such a huge player in national recruiting that I felt it was really important for us at CaneSport to have a presence like yours to help us on a daily basis as we navigate through the recruiting wars that we know are as intense as ever on the national landscape. So let me begin with you today. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Miami's reemergence in national recruiting. They're competing for a lot of the top players in the country. They've got a commitment from Jaden Rashada, one of the top quarterbacks. You were at the Elite 11 with him and Emory Williams. We'll ask you about that in a few minutes. But from your perspective on a global basis, looking at every school in the country, your thoughts on Miami's reemergence on the national recruiting scene?
Yeah, Gary, first of all, welcome to the team, and definitely thanks for the kind words, man. Happy to be working with you again and your team down in South Florida. Obviously, Cristobal, he just simply gets it. He understands the importance of recruiting. I mean, he's been there, he's done that, he's played at Miami, he's been that recruit, he's won championships. He knows it takes talent, takes bodies, takes competition within the program to win at that level. And he has definitely brought Miami back where, this time a year ago, I'm not hearing from near as many national prospects the name Miami come out of their mouth. Just schools they're considering, not saying they're all going there. You're not going to get them all. You're going to lose some, you're going to win some. But he has quickly put Miami back in the discussion of those guys, whether it be on the East Coast, Southeast, even West Coast with his presence there at Oregon, considering Miami. And I think that has to be step number one for Cristobal, that staff in Coral Gables and the University of Miami, is to at least put that team back in the mix for the best players in the country. And I think he's done a great job of that already. And it goes, I think, starts at the top with him and his direction, just kind of, he gets only a handful of head coaches that understand, their need to recruit kids as well. It's not just passed down to the position coaches and coordinators and all the staff in the office, but the head coach has to be involved with the player, the family, and Cristobal definitely understands the importance of that. And I've heard great things about his start so far.
You've gotten to watch him at Alabama, at Oregon, now at Miami. I think you hit a lot of it right there in how he understands recruiting and how intricately involved the head coach has to be and the time that has to be put in. How does Mario Cristobal compare to some of the other better recruiting head coaches in the country, in your opinion?
I put him probably in that top five when it comes to a head coach recruiting and just being, which I think is so important, consistent. It can't be, once a month, once every 2 or 3 weeks. If you want to go get, an elite player, whether it's Jaden Rashada or somebody else, whether it's Nathaniel Joseph in your own backyard, you better be consistent. And in today's world of recruiting, you better make those guys and even their families and their support group, make them feel very important. They have to feel, number one, wanted, appreciated, needed. And that comes from the top. It can't just be a running backs coach, talking to them every day. They have to hear from the head guy what they mean to him, to his program, the vision he has, how important he is, the role they could play, just to really validate what the position coach or the coordinator or his recruiting guy or even an office staffer, what they're telling him, to kind of put all that together. I think Cristobal's up there with those guys like, I think Nick Saban's great. Kirby Smart's great. I think James Franklin's great. There's numerous guys I think that do a great job, but I think Cristobal's up there, at or near the top in that top group, at just understanding how important the consistency and the communication factor is. I mean, they're putting these trust in these coaches, and knowing that head coach, and we know position coaches come and go, to kind of understand the longevity and the plan the head coach has to be at a program like Miami goes a long way with these kids today.
The thing that blew my mind when he was at Oregon in his last year, he recruited the top player in 9 different states to come to Oregon. I thought that was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. And all right, so now he's at Miami, and you've got all this talent in South Florida. You come down to South Florida several times during the year. I'm obviously not telling you anything you don't already know, but they're still recruiting, Chad, on a national level. Like, Mario believes in going out around the country and battling it out for the best players in many different states. And how do you think Miami strikes that balance? Obviously, they have to keep the local kids home, and they have to recruit them very hard. They're also going to be recruiting very hard on the national level. How do you think they strike a balance there?
Yeah, I mean, to win on the national level, not just the ACC championship, but to win and go beat the Alabamas or go beat the Georgias, go beat the Ohio States, you got to recruit the best players in the country. I live in Georgia, so I know there is a balance. But at the end of the day, you've got to get the best players that fits your scheme to win at the highest level. And you're going to have great players right there in Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach on down, Dade County, Miami. You're going to have great players, great athletes specifically. And you're going to have to get those guys and keep those guys at home. But going back to me living in Georgia, I heard a lot about chatter from local high school coaches and people in Georgia when Kirby Smart started going more national instead of just being like Mark Richt and recruiting 80% Georgia kids. And he did a good job winning 10 games. But you see what Kirby Smart just did going national. He won a national championship. Yes. You've got to get the best players in the country. You think Nick Saban only recruits Alabama? Definitely not. He doesn't recruit the South. He recruits the best in America. And I think if Cristobal wants to win, which I know he does, at that level, yes, you do have to put that fence around the elite players that can help you win at that level in your area. But you have to go outside to, whether it be up the East Coast in Virginia, New Jersey, go to California, go to the Pacific Northwest, go to Texas, go to Louisiana, and pull guys here and there to put those final pieces together to win that championship. To win at that level, you have to get the best players across the board and develop those guys.
You mentioned you left out Georgia on this last list, but Georgia's a very big part of that as well. Georgia has emerged as one of the top recruiting states in the country, and Miami is recruiting an enormous number of kids in Georgia. When did you see a little bit of a transition in that regard? Florida's always been regarded as one of the top states in the country, if not the top state, but Georgia is very quickly picking up steam.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the high school coaching in Georgia. I mean, just the consistency. I mean, I get guys every year at the end of the football season reaching out to me from other states asking, hey, is this a good job? I've heard great things about Georgia, the competition, the support system, whether it be the county, the state, for athletic programs. I think just the development, over the last 10 to 12 years has really pushed Georgia up there to be arguably, a top 3 or so state in the country when it comes to college and specifically NFL production, when guys are getting drafted, whether they're coming out of Alabama, Georgia, Miami, or wherever they go in college. But I think it just goes back to the coaches, the consistency, and kind of what they're given, not only financially to coach high school football in Georgia, but just the support system to really put their plan in place and really help develop these guys from a strength program to academically to nutrition. I mean, they're trying to build like small colleges in Georgia high schools to prepare those guys, and nothing like an IMG in Florida, but much smaller than that. But just trying to really prepare those guys physically, mentally, health-wise for college. And it's done a great job in Georgia always have been a great state, but I would say the last 10 or so years have consistently trended up in the numbers.
Yeah, and Miami's obviously taken note of that by how active they are. Now, let me shift gears real quick to NIL. Obviously, a huge part of the landscape in college football, a huge part of the landscape in recruiting. Is it coming down to money in so many cases, Chad? Are you seeing that it's, recruiting is turning into a bidding war?
I mean, there's definitely, obviously, we can't speak on specifics and players. We all hear and have different sources out there on the collective side. And but yeah, I mean, that definitely is playing a role. Obviously, some more than others. Now, I had a specific top recruit in 2024. His dad told me if a school brings up NIL to them, they walk away. That they don't want that to be part of the process. Now, that's not the case for everyone. There's probably more on the other side. There's a pretty even split on kind of when it's important and when it's not to some, depending on different people, their background, where they come from, and so on. But I do think it's become a major factor for a lot of major recruits in this 2023 class. I think at some point before the 2024 class gets going, I think you'll see some type of regulation put on that and kind of what can and can't be done and how much and so on. But right now, it's the wild, wild west. And for schools that are not playing the NIL game as big as others, they're losing out on guys because of that right now. So, yeah, I think it's come to everyone by storm and happened a lot quicker and a lot bigger than people expected or even the intentions were for the NIL. But until the NCAA or whoever gets a hold on this, it's going to play a big role for a lot of top players.
Does NIL negate a recruiter like Mario Cristobal?
Yeah, I don't think it negates, but I think it definitely takes some away from it because, in the old days, it was all about who recruited him the best, who made him feel the most comfortable, who laid out the best plan. But now that's a very small part because now it's about, well, what can you guarantee me in 4 years? Can I make $2 million? Can I make $5 million? Can I make whatever? That's a big part of the discussion now. So it does. I don't think it takes that completely away. I think you have to use that to get your foot in the door right now. I think in a short amount of time that may go back to being more important, that relationship and how you can recruit. But yeah, right now the NIL, probably for a lot of top recruits plays a bigger role than just that relationship.
How about the transfer portal and how that's changed college recruiting? How important is it for schools to save scholarships for the transfer portal?
I think it's very important. It really takes a little bit away from signing day, whether it be early period or February, the traditional signing day. Just the importance of hitting the numbers. If you got 26 spots, you want it back in the old days, you better hit all 26. You want to get the right players. You want to find the right needs, whether it be position stuff or playmate, whatever you're looking for. That class and that group was what you were building on in the future. Now, if you miss, oh well, maybe they transfer out, you get transfers in, you find the next receiver coming out. If you had a guy leave, it's not near as important. Even worse than that, not so much from Miami, but even kids going down lower than Power 5, they're getting left out in the cold because guys were always going to sign late and kind of have that open spot. They would pick up a late D1 offer, a Power 5 school. Now those guys aren't even signing because schools are just going to leave 3, 4, 5 spots open for the transfer portal every year. So it definitely has a wrinkle effect from the college team down to high school and, leaving kids kind of out in the cold per se. But the transfer portal has definitely changed the game. I've said numerous times, I don't think Alabama is playing in the national championship game last year without Henry Totolo coming from Tennessee, Jamison Williams coming from Ohio State. They were a great team. Maybe they were there, but I think those transfers they got across the board last year in a way save them and put them back in that position. So I definitely think that has changed the game and impacted the game. You're going to see, I think, Lincoln Riley win pretty quickly at USC because he gets double-digit transfers. Texas has so many with Sark in year 2. So I do think it's definitely made a major impact in college football.
The one thing that we've seen at Miami is they're not recruiting average players anymore. They're not going to give scholarships to average players. They're recruiting the creme de la creme, and whatever they have left at the end, numbers-wise, is going to go to the transfer portal. They signed 12 impact transfers this year, so it's a big part of the equation at Miami. I know you got a lot to do, Chad. I did want to ask you one thing. You were at the Elite 11 towards the end of last week. You got a chance to watch Jaden Rashada, the new Miami commit, Emory Williams, already a Miami commit when Rashada committed. Give us your initial impressions of those two guys after watching them live at this stage of their development at the Elite 11.
Yeah, it was my first time seeing Emory, so I'll start with him. I've seen bits of tape, stuff like that, but I thought he was just pretty just consistent, nothing flashy, nothing one specific part of his game, really jumped out and said elite, but I just thought he was pretty steady in the middle of the pack for me based on what I saw. Now, I'm not watching every throw, every play. I'm out there trying to build relationships and get recruiting information also in between throws and talking to parents and everything else. But I thought just for my first time really seeing him for a couple of days, I thought just pretty consistent, pretty steady, nothing in a bad way, but nothing like elite. Then when it comes to Jaden, obviously I've seen him in the past, and obviously the bigger name of the two, and Jaden, I felt like just, I've seen him throw before, and I know I watched him for 3 days in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago, and he definitely flashed his moments out there. I felt like out here a little bit when we were in LA for Elite 11 last week, I felt a little bit just mentally tired. I mean, just looking at his body language and just, how he walked on the field and how he competed. Not saying he didn't compete at a high level because he definitely put the work in out there. But I just saw a kid that was tired, a guy that's been through the ringer the past few weeks from back to back to back official visits, a few days off, goes to Miami, makes that decision. And we all know under a lot of pressure, a lot of scrutiny, everybody questioning his every move. So I think he kind of welcomes now going back home to Northern California, taking July off, being committed to Miami, and just rest and refresh and prepare for a senior year. I mean, he's a talented kid. He was not at his best at the Elite, in my opinion, at the Elite 11. Looked tired, looked drained, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I just saw a different Jaden, even that did in Las Vegas 2.5 weeks ago, at the Elite 11. Still an elite talent that Miami has to be excited about to work with in the future.
Last question. Obviously, the Emory Williams camp is out there checking out Jaden Rashada. I mean, they want to see what the situation is. If Emory sticks with Miami, what kind of competition it would be, that sort of thing. In your opinion, did you get any sense of whether Emory Williams sticks with Miami?
I didn't really get a vibe either way. I mean, honestly, I know he loves Miami. So I think he's definitely going to keep one eye open and keep his ears open to see what other schools, because we see all these top quarterbacks going off the board, and maybe Emory's maybe not in that elite top group, but we know what that means for guys right below that. They'll get more options, more offers come in from schools that need that quarterback in this class. So I think schools are going to use that against Miami and try to recruit him, saying, hey, you're a second quarterback. We know Jaden's rated higher, blah, blah, blah. But I did not get the sense anything's close to happening there. I mean, from all I gathered, he feels good about Miami. He's going to continue communicating with Miami, but at the same time, keep the other ear open to other schools too.
Chad, it's great to be back on the same team as you. Looking forward to it, obviously, in the coming days, months, weeks, years. And thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to talking to you again down the road.
Looking forward to it, Gary. Thanks for having me, man.
You got it, man. Thank you. He's Chad Simmons, On3's National Director of Recruiting. Thank you for joining us once again on CaneSport's Inside the Lines.